This next story I would have never told during my mom's lifetime. She would have been mortified to know that my dad had related this to me when I was just 17. But now that I've lost both my parents, I treasure the way this story brings them back to life, and not their sanitized selves, not the cleaned up versions that are left behind in the family lore. I mean their real human selves, young and vibrant and lusty. My mom and dad were courting in 1950s Houston. And the difference between their levels of experience in the ways of love and sex could not have been more extreme. My dad had just 10 years before swept across Europe with the 7th Corps of the U.S. Army, liberating town after town in France, Germany, and Poland. And in every one of those towns, he was made the mayor of that town under martial law because of his polyglot skills. He knew Russian, French, German, and Polish. The power that he had and just the visibility as the mayor of that town, plus the fact that he was a really good comic storyteller and had these amazing steel gray blue eyes that I did not get, damn recessive genes, and the fact that these towns had been for years drained of all able-bodied men, ingratiated himself to the town's women so much that at one point when I asked my dad how many girlfriends he had during the war, he just made this vague gesture to the heavens as though I had asked him how many stars are in the sky. By contrast, my mom had grown up, first of all, 10 years younger. And secondly, she'd grown up in this tiny insular town in southeast Texas. And she was pretty, and she was popular, and she was a drum majorette, and she was even elected class sweetheart in her senior year. But she never dated at all that entire time because she only wanted to date Jewish boys. And that was a problem because she was growing up in Cold Springs, Texas, and the nearest Jewish boy was 77 miles to the south-southwest. She had finally gotten out of that vortex of that tiny, tiny town, and she was living in the big city, Houston, Texas. But to ease the transition, the culture shock of the big bad city, she had elected to live in, there were these dorms for single women, right? Which was kind of, well, it kind of like did dampen things. My dad hated the place because it had a 9:30 curfew and all of the halls were heavily guarded. At one point, she told a girlfriend that she thought a proposal was imminent, and her girlfriend said, "There's something you don't know about this man yet. You've got to find out." So her girlfriend set up a pool party. Now, in order to understand the rest of this story, we're going to have to take a brief survey of the history of men's swimwear. No one has researched or written about this topic more than the great Dr. Margaret Michter, shown here doing the fieldwork for which she was so well known. Now, her great contribution to the study of fashion is what we call the Michter scale. Still in use to this day, it is most valuable because any piece of men's swimwear can be placed unambiguously on this scale. Always living at Michter equals 100 is the utilitarian athletic swimwear, very form-fitting, not for aesthetic purposes, but for the purpose of achieving maximum speed in the water. You'll always find this design at Michter equals 100. Well, what about beach wear? What about poolside wear? Well, that is fashion, and as such it has drifted up and down the Michter scale throughout the decades. Let's take a look at contemporary swimwear. Since the 1990s, particularly in North America, this has been the design that has been predominant. Baggy, formless, lifeless. It basically lives at Michter equals 0. The 0 representing the fact that it gives interested parties no information whatsoever. But this high level of prudery and fear of male exposure has not always been the norm, and even in what we consider to be antique times, such as the 1950s, men's swimwear was living well up the Michter scale at about the 83 to 89 zone. So, we are back in Houston. My dad has exited the changing room, and he notices where my mom's gaze is as he leaves, as he emerges, and he realizes this pool party was nothing but a ploy, and all she really wanted was a premarital package inspection. Well, they were actually, to tell you how well that inspection went, they were engaged by the end of that day. And I am now about to show you the very first photo of my parents as an engaged couple. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Libby and her fiancé, Danny Sklar. You may not remember this story a year from now, but I think I probably changed forever the way you will look at mid-century beach scenes. That's all.